Hey everybody, how you doing? It's good to see you today. This is just a note to the stations down the line that this video may be a little longer than normal. So we're looking today at Proverbs chapter 5, and I hope that you will go out and download a copy of the outline. I put it into the letter. See, there's a link in the letter for the outline. Proverbs 5 is very important, and it begins with a discussion of discretion. You'll notice there in verse 2 that thou mayest regard discretion. And you'll recall from the first chapter, we talked about discretion being one of the 10 conditions or the 10 outcomes that the teacher wants the student to achieve. Discretion. And it's always linked with the young man, so that the young man can have discretion. And of course, young men need that because young men are a little hot-headed and sort of jump off the rail every now and then. Old men do too, though. So discretion is something that's not just for the young, but it's for the old as well. And he begins with, well, actually, the whole chapter is about the strange woman. So we're talking about discretion, and then he launches into this chapter-long discussion of the strange woman and the danger of the strange woman. And you'll notice there are 3 My Son lessons, and I've given each one a little title out to the side. The first one is an introduction to the strange woman. The second is commandments to keep you safe from the strange woman. And then the third one is the Lord's perspective on the strange woman. Now you say, well, now I don't have a problem with that. Harlotry is not a part of my life. And we might look at this chapter and say, well, that's archaic, or it's just for a certain class of people, or it's just for, young men who have trouble or struggle with this kind of thing. But no, really, I think what we see here is a discussion of the problem of idolatry. Because just with the strange woman, idolatry is all about replacement. We replace God with something else. We don't look to Him for our need, and so because we don't do that, we don't see the thing that He's already provided for us, and we try to replace it in our life. Idolatry, of course, we think, well, we don't have a whole lot of trouble with that because there aren't any temples around here with standing statues that people go and worship. But you understand the problem, that idolatry is something that's in the heart of men. And as I said, replacement's at the heart of that. And the 4 commandments that he gives us here in the heart of the chapter really deal with how to escape the trap of idolatry in the life of the individual. And the 4 things are very powerful things. So, you want to go back to and refresh and revive the devotion that we have to the Lord, and to see His hand working in our life in those areas of need that we've tried to replace Him in. So, very first thing is, when you have trouble with some sort of idolatry, some sort of replacement of God, then what do you need to do? He gives us that in verse 8. Remove yourself from her way. So we have to remove ourselves from the temptation. The young man walks by the harlot's house, and because he walks by the house, he's tempted. So very first thing is, don't walk by her house. Don't place yourself in a position to be tempted by something that you already have a need in, and your faith is weak in. So just don't do it. You have to remove yourself. So there's a removal of yourself and the thing from your existence so that you're not tempted by it. Now this is the hardest sell, because sometimes these things are just around us all the time, and it's hard for us to exclude ourselves from it. But that's the very first thing, is remove yourself from the temptation. Because if you don't walk by the house, you're not going to be tempted to go into the house. So remove yourself from the way to the house. The second thing, there in verse 15, drink waters out of your own cistern. Look around and see how God has already provided for that need in your life. And when you find it, then engage in that. Let the truth be revived. Let the thing that the Lord has provided be refreshed in your life. So number one, remove yourself from the temptation. Number two, what you have that provides for that need, whatever it might be, engage in that because that's what the Lord has provided for you. Secondly, and of course, in regards to the strange woman, he says, drink waters out of your own cistern. That is, you have a sexual partner in your wife or your husband, therefore, engage with them rather than the harlot. So number one, remove yourself from their way, from that temptation. Number two, you have something already. The Lord has provided it for you, so engage with that. Number three, he says there in verse 9 or end of 18, beginning of 19, rejoice in the wife of your youth. So you need to rejoice in the thing that God has provided. Now, all of these things are an act of faith. You say, I don't want to rejoice in the thing that God has provided. Well, friend, if you're going to be free of the idolatry, and if you're going to be free of the temptation, and you're going to be free of the guilt, and you're going to be free of the sin and all of that, then you need to identify the thing he's provided and rejoice in it. And you rejoice in it by using it to meet your need. And allow that thing to be the only item in your heart. And then the fourth thing he says there is in verse, I think it's the end of 19. Yeah, end of verse 19, he says, be ravished always with her love. Now, we're to rejoice in what God has provided for us, and we're to be ravished, that is, to be deeply in love with that which God has provided for us, both emotionally and by faith. So we are to, those four things, remove ourselves from the temptation. Number two, participate and use the thing that God has provided for you. Number three, rejoice in that thing. And number four, fall in love with it all over again. Whether it's your wife, your husband, or whatever it might be that God has provided to replace the need that you feel. So those four things, those four commandments that he gives us right in the very heart of the chapter are important points, important steps to being free from the strange woman, or as I've framed it here in this teaching, to be free from the idol that has dominated your life. You don't want to be involved in idolatry, replacement of God in any part of your life. So look around, find out what it is that you need to remove yourself from, and begin the process today. Love you guys, and I miss you. I hope you enjoy this 5th chapter of Proverbs. And tomorrow we'll be in the book of Matthew, so I hope you join me then. See you. Love you. Bye.